Hey everyone, welcome to today's edition of One Single Story. It is Wednesday. We're in the book of Zechariah, chapter 9, and it begins by saying, "Rejoice, O people of Zion, shout in triumph, O people of Jerusalem. Look, your king is coming to you. He is righteous and victorious, yet he is humble, riding on a donkey, riding on a donkey's colt." So, um, and it and I want to say that sometimes I read the Bible very literally, and that can cause problems, you know, um, and it isn't always, as straightforward as I want it to be. Things here, but first thing I would say is this seems to be a foreshadowing of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's the part of what we should get from this. And secondly, he talks about three qualities. One, which when you read it appears to be challenging to the other two. Okay, he says he is righteous and victorious, yet he is humble, riding on a donkey's colt. So the question that I have is, how do you mesh the qualities of righteousness, being victorious, and humility together? Because when I read it, so what I read was righteous and victorious creates this in you, and humility doesn't always go with that, And so how do you mesh those qualities together, and why would they be opposed to one another?
I would definitely say that you would have to know that there's something bigger than you that you report to. So if you're a king and you know that you report to God, that would be something that should keep you humble. We obviously see through the Old Testament a multitude of kings that did not, and they allowed the power to go to their head. But that would be one big thing to help mesh the two together.
I don't see an issue with righteousness and humility. I think if you're truly righteous, humility is in that package of righteousness. The victorious, as I was looking at a commentary on this, it was like, yeah, this is one of the really poorly translated verses. And so I was just looking at some different translations because, each one kind of gives a different view. And the thought of that victorious, which I think is what I would find challenging, to be humble, yet like just have won like a battle with a sword or something, is maybe more like vindicated by God, or the NASB says endowed with salvation. He is righteous and endowed with salvation, humble and mounted on a donkey. And so I think righteous and vindicated by God is how I would read that. And I think that those can all mesh together, that it's in one of your recent sermons, you talked about how humility, I believe, is a choice. I'm not sure if that's the exact word it was, but like you can have success, but you have to make the choice to be humble with it. And I think that is the choice that you make, that you can have righteousness and be victorious or be saved, but you have to be humble about it. And that's the choice you have to make.
Yeah, I do think humility is a choice, period. I also think righteousness is a choice, I think I was trying to figure out how I wanted to say this, because you said, if you're righteous, you should be humble. And the first thing I thought of is self-righteousness. Self-righteousness is what goes against humility, in my opinion. So godly righteousness, I think, would bring humility. But, and it is, I think the challenges become when you are know what the right word is. When you are good at anything, even if you're good at being humble, it's hard to remain humble. You know what I'm saying? Like I hear people who think, I said recently in a sermon, Moses is attributed to writing the first 5 books of the Bible, but it says he's the most humble person who ever lived. Like, how do you write that and still be that? But winning creates certain challenges. The reason why righteous people can become self-righteous is because they begin to think they did it. It was all about them. The same is true of being victorious. And people are like, well, I can give you some examples. So we talk about. I hear coaches say there's no I in team. Which is, it sounds good, but it ain't all it's cracked up to be.
Then they follow with make sure you get him the ball or get her the ball.
But even in individual sports that are not team sports, golf, boxing, MMA, some tennis, whatever, there's still, that person still didn't achieve it by themselves. They may have had certain talents, certain abilities, certain skill set that allowed them to do it, but they had coaches along the way. They had parents who funded it. They were, I think about Mike Tyson, and what was his trainer's name? Gus D'Amato. That sound right? And he took him under his wing. He was, I'm thinking particularly right now, a guy who spoke for us a couple years ago, who is the chaplain for the Kansas City Chiefs. He does some inner city ministry and oversees a boxing facility there to help get kids off the street. If a world champion comes out of that, he didn't do it on his own. Okay. And whatever victory I achieve, even whatever righteousness, that I may be able to live out in my life, I probably didn't get it on my own. It wasn't a singular effort. It was a book somebody wrote or a sermon somebody preached or a word somebody spoke into my life or an interaction that I had that shaped that, or it was other people who contributed to us being able to accomplish something, and it may look like it was someone, but the problem then it goes to our head. We can all think of people who had some amount of success, and then it goes to their head. And I think humility is the hardest choice. It's not I don't think humility is the default. Pride is the default. Arrogance is the default. I think if you ask most people want to be winners. Most people want to be righteous. Not everybody strives to be humble because it's
a discipline.
Well, it's a tension. How do you because imagine what it's like. I referenced this yesterday, but the podcast we were listening to was about a book, and y'all help me with the name of it. It was
Trust?
Celebrities for Jesus.
Celebrities or something, yeah, for Jesus. And it was talking about the difference between celebrity and fame. I tell people all the time, I have, so I used to sing when I was younger for a living. That's what I did for a job for a little while. Thing I wanted to do forever. But I couldn't do it and live righteously because it messed with my ego. I was with recently a gentleman that was a bishop in the denomination that I grew up in, and I had a chance to move in what I call their political system. And he asked me, he said, "Do you regret not taking that job?" I said, "No, because I would have gone to hell trying to become the general overseer, because like once I got in, I would have went after it. That's just my nature. And pastoring for me is without a doubt the place I have to be, because there's always something to bring me, to ground me. There's
Staff members keep you humble.
Yeah, well, my wife tells me that's her job. Yeah, but no, I mean, there's always some challenge. There's some. It becomes clear. Okay, I didn't get this exactly right. I said the wrong thing, did the wrong thing, because I'm working in the context of relationships. When I was traveling, when singing every night, it was a new crowd. I was perfect. If you're in that political sphere of church denominations, you're always, everybody thinks you're God. And I've been around some of these celebrities for Jesus, and some of them are as genuine as they can possibly be. Some of them are as disingenuous and think it's all about them as they can possibly be. Mm-hmm. And somewhere along the line, the victoriousness turned into arrogance and pride, and they lost the humility. And the goal is, I don't think there's anything that says don't win. I don't think God wants us to be losers for Jesus. Like, sometimes we do. Mm-hmm. I don't think that's the intent. I don't think we're supposed to be self-righteous or unrighteous and excuse our poor behavior because of the grace of God. But I also think that while we strive to be victorious and while we strive to live righteous life, we also have to work just as hard at being humble, or finding the context that is going to help us remain humble. Does that make sense? Because I do think there are contexts for all of us that help us remain humble, and most of the time that's done in the context of relationship. It's why we can't exclude ourselves from relationship, because people do keep us humble.
I think a lot of what keeps you in that center is, are you keeping God at the center of your life? Are you keeping him at the center of your decisions? And then as you're rising up to a position of power or fame or something like that, are you casting vision out for the benefit of the people around you or for your benefit? I think that will easily, if you choose you all the time, if you become the center of everything, you'll easily gravitate towards the easy or the defaults of ego and arrogance and stuff like that.
I would agree that community is what can keep you humble, because when you're in that daily relationship with folks, then your own flaws become evident to others, and so then they're able to provide some checks and balances throughout, just on like a regular basis. I think that that's important to have people around you who are willing to tell you no. That was one of the things in the Celebrities for Jesus that, or that we've kind of talked about multiple times in our leadership discussions. You have to have people who are willing to tell you no, who are willing to, gently correct you when like there's things that you aren't seeing right.
Yeah, it's just, you got to have those people in your life. Mm-hmm. And it's not always easy. It's not, because I was talking with a guy one time, and he said he was a pastor, and he was asking me to pray for him. He had been diagnosed as a diabetic. He said, but I don't want anybody to know because I don't want them to view me as weak. I'm like, so what happens if you like go into some, I don't know, diabetic shock? Mm-hmm. They're going to go, I don't know what to do. If they know how to help you, right? And I don't know. I don't understand that reasoning, but there are people who they got to keep up a certain facade, so that people think more highly of them than they should. Thank you for joining us today on this edition of One Single Story. We hope you'll be back tomorrow as we continue our conversation in the book of Zechariah.